Hello, English learners, and welcome back to Mr. English Talks. Today, we're shifting gears. We're leaving the ateliers of Paris and heading onto the open highway. We're talking about a sound. Not a melody, but a deep, rumbling, potato, potato, potato rhythm that echoes through small towns and across canyon roads. We're talking about a feeling. Not of luxury, but of leather, grease, wind in your face, and the horizon calling your name. This is the story of how a simple machine became a worldwide icon. This is how Harley-Davidson became a symbol of freedom. And it's a story about much more than motorcycles. It's a story about rebellion, community, and the American myth itself. Our story starts in a 10 by 15-foot wooden shed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in 1903. Picture this: two young friends in their early 20s, William S. Harley and Arthur Davidson, tinkering with a bicycle and a small engine. They weren't titans of industry. They were draftsmen and pattern makers, sons of working-class immigrants, fueled by a simple desire to make something that moved. Their first motor bicycle was primitive, barely able to climb a hill without the rider pedaling to help. But it was a start. Joined by Arthur's brothers Walter and William Davidson, they incorporated the Harley-Davidson Motor Company in 1907. This was their origin: humble, hands-on Midwestern. There was no grand plan to symbolize freedom. The plan was to build a reliable machine that worked. And they did. By focusing on durability, simplicity, and torque, pulling power, they found early customers not in rebels, but in practical people, police departments, the U.S. military, and postal workers. The Harley was a workhorse. This foundation of rugged, American-made reliability is the first crucial layer of the legend. The symbol was built on a rock-solid machine. Then came the wars. Harley-Davidson supplied tens of thousands of motorcycles to the U.S. military in both World War I and World War II. This is where the story takes a pivotal turn. For a generation of young American soldiers, the Harley wasn't a symbol of rebellion. It was a symbol of duty, brotherhood, and American engineering under extreme conditions. It was the machine that carried them through Europe and the Pacific. And when these soldiers returned home in 1945, they were changed men. They had seen the world, faced mortality, and chafed under the rigid discipline of military life. They came back to America that was prosperous, but also conformist, the era of suburban tract homes, gray flannel suits, and strict social rules. For many, it felt suffocating. And what did they do? Many of them bought motorcycles. And not just any motorcycles. They bought the familiar, durable machines they knew from the war, Harleys. They formed clubs. They customized their bikes, stripping them down, making them louder, faster, more personal, rebelling against the conformity of the new cars like the Chevrolet. They wore leather jackets not as a fashion statement, but as practical armor against the elements. This group, most famously embodied by the Hollister incident in 1947, which inspired the film The Wild One, were labeled outlaws by a worried public. The media painted them as dangerous, anarchic rebels. And in doing so, they accidentally created the most powerful marketing image in history: the Harley-Davidson rider as the untamed, individualistic American outlaw. Harley-Davidson, the company, was initially terrified of this association. But by the 1960s and 70s, they began to realize they didn't own just a motorcycle company. They owned a mythology. They started to lean into it, but carefully. They sold the dream of escape, of individuality. Advertising shifted from talking about engine specs to selling a feeling. It wasn't about transportation. It was about transformation. The moment you swung a leg over that saddle, you weren't a dentist or a banker. You were a free spirit on an iron horse. This was marketing alchemy. They took a sense of alienation and rebellion and commodified it into a powerful, purchasable identity. Then, they did something genius. They fostered the cult of ownership and community. Unlike a car, where you just join an anonymous club of fellow drivers, buying a Harley made you part of the Harley family. There were official HOG, Harley Owners Group, chapters everywhere. Rallies like the massive one in Sturgis, South Dakota, became pilgrimages. It wasn't just a ride. It was a rolling block party, a tribe with its own rituals, codes, and uniform, the leather vest covered in patches telling your story. The brand became the center of a lifestyle. The motorcycle was the ticket to an exclusive, rebellious club. The sound of the engine, that unique, rumbling V-twin potato exhaust note, became the tribe's audible, secret handshake. But the story isn't all open roads. Harley faced near extinction in the 1970s and 80s from competition with superior, cheaper Japanese bikes. They survived only through tariffs, a fierce loyalty from their core base, and a relentless focus on their heritage and that intangible feel. They didn't win on technology. They won on soul. They sold nostalgia, American pride, and that irreplaceable sense of authenticity. So, how did a Milwaukee workhorse become the global symbol of freedom? Let's break it down. First, it was forged in authentic utility. Its toughness, born from military and police use, gave it a credible, real backbone. You can't fake that history. Second, it was adopted by a counterculture. The post-war rebels and later the 60s, 70s outlaw bikers, both real and Hollywood versions like Easy Rider, grafted their values of rebellion and anti-establishment freedom onto the machine. Harley became the steed for the outsider hero. Third, the company sold the dream, not just the machine. They masterfully marketed the emotional payoff, the escape, the individuality, the brotherhood. They sold the destination, freedom, and the vehicle became secondary. Fourth, they built a tribe. They created a palpable, immersive community around the product. Ownership was an identity, a membership. The brand became a flag around which people rallied. Fifth, it embraced and protected its flaws. The classic air-cooled V-twin is hot, loud, vibrates, and isn't the most efficient. But fans don't see flaws. They see character. That rumble isn't noise. It's a voice. In a world of smooth, silent efficiency, Harley's imperfect, analog soul became its greatest strength. For you, as an English learner, the lesson is profound. You are building your own vehicle for freedom, the freedom to connect, to work, to explore new cultures. But like Harley, true power in language isn't just about technical perfection, the specs of perfect grammar. It's about character, authenticity, and connection. It's about finding your voice, the way you express yourself that is uniquely you. It's about finding your tribe of fellow learners or speakers. Don't just learn words. Learn the feeling you want to convey. Build a vehicle for your personality. If this story of engines, rebels, and the open road resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. English Talks for more journeys into the symbols that shape our world. Hit the like button if you've ever felt the call of the open road in life or in learning, and tell me in the comments. What is your Harley? What represents freedom for you? Remember, keep learning, keep finding your own voice, and I will see you on the road ahead.